creating your seat at the table with your host, Ashley Little, as she welcomes her guest to the table.
Welcome to Creating Your Seat at the Table. I am your host, Ashley Little. A little bit about myself: corporate professional by day, entrepreneur by night, 5-time best-selling author, CEO and founder of Ashley Little Enterprises, LLC, owner and creator of Creative Broadcasting, and co-founder and owner of Talk Radio and TV Network, LLP. Tonight, we have an amazing special VIP guest by the name of Dr. Barbara Reynolds. A little bit about her. Coretta Scott King entrusted Reverend Dr. Barbara Reynolds with her story because she is an anointed, talented, and longtime family friend who has always held a voice in view that demands when we say what's on our minds and cherish what's in our hearts. Dr. Reynolds is an ordained minister, a columnist who interviewed Presidents Reagan, President Carter, and President Clinton. She is co-author of the new memoir, Coretta Scott King, My Life, My Love, My Legacy. She is also a 6-time author in her own right, including Out of Hell and Living Well, Healing from the Inside Out. She has written for many major magazines and newspapers, including Washington Post, the Chicago Tribune, Playboy, Ebony, Essence, and U.S. Today, where she was a columnist and editorial board member for 13 years. In her journey as a longtime activist for civil rights, women's equality, and fighting against today's challenge, gun violence, she has broken barriers as the first African-American woman on the USA Today editorial board, one of the first African-American women to be awarded a Neming Fellow at Harvard University, and Chaplain of the Week at Chattanooga Institution, and selected 2015 D.C. Mother of the Year for birthing new hope into women. Welcome to the table, the amazing Dr. Barbara Reynolds. How are you?
Well, thank you so much for having me on. We were together about 2 or 3 weeks ago in Indianapolis, and I met you then, and I'm so glad to be connected once again with you.
Yes,
you were
I'm excited.
A dynamic mistress of ceremonies there. You really, really brought the right questions and the right spirit to that conference, and so it's quite an honor to be on the line with you.
Well, I'm excited, Dr. Reynolds. I'm humbled that you were to say that because it's a blessing to have you on the show tonight to really share some wisdom and knowledge with my listeners. So please tell us more about your entrepreneur journey and your story.
Well, it depends on which story. that I have so many stories.
Yes.
It depends on which story that you want me to tell.
So
if you want the civil rights story, I can begin 50 years ago in actually Brownsville, Tennessee. You're in Nashville, right?
Absolutely.
I came there as a student some 50 years ago to help black people register to vote, because at that point they couldn't register to vote without fear of death. And so I came and joined the King movement, and that was the first time I understood that showing up in certain places with a black face meant that I could actually be killed, because our group was from Ohio State University, and we really were just young and naive, and we were chased by the Klan, and we almost lost our lives in the Brownsville, Tennessee movement. That's how I got started in the movement, but I was in the movement for so many years by covering discrimination and injustice. To cover issues dealing with the Carter administration, and working for civil rights for all of these years. And while working for the rights of others, I had to fight extreme discrimination within the journalistic institutions that I was a part of. So, that's one story. But there are many other stories.
Yes, and I mean, just sharing what you shared is so amazing, how you overcame and broke different barriers. And you also, Dr. Reynolds, the late Coretta Scott King, she entrusted you with her story because you was a longtime family friend, and you demanded we say what's on our minds and cherish what's in our hearts. So tell us more about that.
Oh, what's important is that Coretta King is one of the most important civil rights heroes of our whole era. First of all, she was a woman of great courage. In 1965, her home was bombed. She was in the home with her 2-month-old baby Yolanda, and that was during the height of the Montgomery bus boycott. And there was a thud on the porch, and she was in the back. She ran to the front, and the whole porch was blown off, and she just got her baby and did not know if the whole church, her whole home was going to be blown away. And the next day, Dr. King's father came, and because Dr. King was the pastor of the church, of Dexter Baptist Church there, and Dr. King Sr. came to the house and said, "I'm going to take Coretta and the baby home because they could get killed here." And Coretta was only in her early 20s, and she told Dr. King Sr., "You don't understand. I'm not just married to Martin. I'm married to the movement, and I'm going to stay." And Dr. King often said if his wife had left, he would have left, and maybe there would have never been a bus boycott. There never would have been a Rosa Parks. There never would have been the bus boycott that really kicked off the modern civil rights movement. I mean, this is the woman that I know, the woman that had to live a life of knowing that any moment she could be murdered or her husband could be murdered only because they was trying to stand up for the rights of the poor and the have-nots in the world. In March, nonviolently, I mean, for peace and inclusion and for the right for blacks to have the constitutional guaranteed right to vote. I mean, this was a love story. These were two people who, Dr. King and Coretta King, loved each other, but they knew that they were both sacrificial lambs, that someday their lives would be taken because they stood up for other people, for black people and children and the poor. So and so this is the woman I know that after Dr. King was murdered, she carried on a movement to deal with issues nonviolently. She trained police and citizens in nonviolent peace offenses. You know, she was the one that helped organize the effort to make Dr. King's birthday a holiday. And, you know, as we mourn the death of John Conyers of Michigan, who died Sunday, I mean, he was the one that passed legislation for the King holiday 15 different times at least. It was all turned down until eventually, you know, it was accepted in the 70s to make Dr. King a holiday at the beginning of that time. So, you know, this is the woman that I knew, and I was reporting on her from the Chicago Tribune as a writer, and I was just with her. I mean, she took me on as a friend, and after her death, people wanted somebody to write her story. And so they selected me I was selected to write her memoir. And, of course, you know, a memoir is very different from a biography because a biography, you can report about someone. An autobiography is what someone says about themselves. But a memoir was very difficult because she had passed 10 years, you know, before I even wrote the memoir. And I had to know her well enough to know in many instances what she would say about a situation. She was not here for me to ask her anymore. So it was well received. It was on the New York Times selected it. USA Today selected it. So, you know, but my point was I wanted people to know her. It wasn't about me. It was about her, because if you don't know her story, you don't have history. Her story, HERSTORY, her story has to be complete if we're going to have a history. So that's another story.
I love that. I just love that, you know, you have so much knowledge to share with us, Dr. Reynolds, and so much history behind it, and, you know, with writing Coretta's memoir and, you know, being there during those times to really share with us now, you know, how things were then and now. So what are your views on how things are today compared to, you know,
okay, how long you got? You got the rest of the night?
Well, I don't have the rest of the night, but we got about okay. So you can speak just a little bit on it, just a little bit. You can
okay, because I got a lot to say. Because this is, you know, I've talked to President Reagan and Carter and the Bush and George Bush. I mean, I've watched society. I really thought when Barack Obama was elected, we had reached a peak where we could almost think that what Dr. King fought for, we could really now achieve it because a black man could be president. We could talk in terms of what we could do as an inclusive society. And then when he left, it looked like all the haters was just waiting to just come out and attack, and the election of Donald Trump is evil. I look at how many people we got in America. What, 300 million, I think. And this is the best we can come up with. A hater, a person who has called people from Africa. They said that we come from S-holes. A person who called black football players SOBs because they took a knee to kneel for peace. You know, a person who has a national policy of putting brown children in cages and making that separation of children policy of the United States. A man who sold us out to the Russians, had the Russians come in here and set up false websites and enclose races. They had about 10 million false ads, and that he obstructed justice in so many different ways. Then he goes with the Ukraine situation and says to those people, we're not going to help you fight your war unless you go and dig up dirt on Biden. I mean, and then he said, China, you come in and help us too. I mean, he has sold the democratic society out. I don't care if you white, black, or polka dot. This man has just sold us out and put us in a moral swamp where you have to tell your children to go to bed because the president is coming on air. The vulgarity that he uses, call his opponent scum, the vulgarity that comes from his mouth. I mean, we are in a moral sore, and I watch it every day. And sometimes I have to just turn the TV off because it's so bad. Because, you know, I was schooled in the King philosophy. I was in the movement. And we had people who we had to fight, Bull Connor. You know, we had to go across the Edmund Pettus Bridge and were beat with clubs and gassed. But we were taught not to hate, to fight the system, but not to hate the person. You know, we were taught that nonviolence is a way of life for courageous people, and to resist evil. But we never, even in the worst of times, talked about even the white people who were shooting other us and the white people who are shooting blacks even today. We would pray for them. We would demonstrate. We would try to vote them out of office. But we have set up such a terrible symbol of life for our young people. You know, you see a bully as a president. You see a man who's paying off a porno stars as president. A man who's his lawyer went to jail for the crime he told him to do. I mean, what kind of system do we have? It's very, but there is hope rising. You know, if I look out there and see the evil, I know that good will always triumph over it, because people are coming to the point to know that we have to deal with our dislikes of each other. Because, you know, if there's a fire, everybody got to run out the door. You can't look and say, I don't like that one. You know, you get out the fire. And so we're going to have to be a better informed people, organized, to put out this fire, because this man is trying to burn our country down. So I could say more, but, you know. But I'm sitting up in Washington watching this every day. So I cannot have a passionate, you know, sort of weak kind of thought about this. I'm watching this and knowing if Barack Obama had done one of the things that this man done, you know, I don't know if he would have been lynched. So, I mean, it's just very important that we vote, because they're going to steal some votes. Definitely, because they got away with it. There was no penalty for the voting irregularities that already happened. So we know that black people and good people are going to have to get out there and vote more than ever to make up for the votes that they're going to try to steal. But we have to have new leadership, because we have to have a society where our young people will know right from wrong and not see bullying. And this man has told 10,000 lies that's been documented. He tells an average of 8 lies every day. This is supposed to be the leader of the Western world.
So, Dr. Reynolds, what is some advice you would give to listeners who are aspiring journalists that want to become a journalist? Because you've been, you know, a columnist about 13 years. You know, so what is some advice you would give to those listeners who are aspiring to be journalists?
Well, this is the time to jump in, because right now, this is the finest hour for journalists, for truth tellers, for people who have the boldness and the courage to tell the truth, because so many of the abuses that are going on, if the journalist wasn't out there taking the knots, being called the enemy of the people, the abuses would not be covered. And because the people who do cover them, I mean, well, you know, they are called enemies of the people and are talked about at the highest power, and you don't know when someone is going to try to to hurt them. And so now there's when I was coming along, it was much more difficult because I was one of the first black women in mainstream journalism. But you have different niches you can get into. For example, if you understand technology, you can use social media to build your own platform because, technology is becoming offensive to black people because there are facial recognitions for systems, for example, that cannot identify black skin appropriately. And so these kind of programs are going to be in some of the driverless cars. So if you're walking across the street and your skin is black, right now with the systems they have, you just might get run over. But people, there's a niche for that. Like Elizabeth Warren says, there's a plan for that. There's a plan that my mentee, Tracy Gales, has walked into. Right now she has built a platform for gospel singers and people who are artists in this field so that they can tell the story of their spirituality. And now it's like anybody who's a gospel activist or star, they seek out Tracy Gales because that's her way of acting on her dream to be a journalist. You see, there's all kinds, because it's not controlled like it was. When I was coming up, you had to get in one of the major newspapers, and fortunately, I was in one. I was one of the founders of USA Today. And you had to play it by their rules. But now, you can communicate all kinds of ways. Look what Jessica Mosley did in Indianapolis. She came out with a Miss CEO book, Ain't No Plan B. So she now has a platform. She's going to London with her platform. You see, and I'm able to talk and speak on issues I care about. I'm teaching on technology and God. I'm trying to train up a whole group of what I call tech evangelists, so that we can defend God as we go forth and we worship these cell phones and all of the technology, and almost far more than many are worshiping the God who created it. So I'm trying to teach people how to understand that, technology is what God did. When he spoke the world into existence, he created technology with his language. He spoke it. And his technology that he used when he took and with his finger and wrote the 10 Commandments. Who could do that? So I'm trying to teach a whole group of people and write about these issues. So, there's a niche. Like if you care about children, one out of every 6 child goes to bed every day hungry. You can get a platform and you can crusade against that. You can crusade against other black men and women are being shot down by police. A black woman sitting in her home with her nephew, and a policeman shoots through the door and kills her. Another black man in his own home, and a white woman comes and shoots him, saying that was her house. She got 10 years, but in 5 years, she'll probably be out. So there's all kinds of ways that you can go to social media. You can do Facebook. You create your own platforms. The Black Lives Matter, the Me Too movement, they didn't wait on the New York Times to say that they were valuable or valid.
Right.
They created a movement because we have different communication tools which we can use now. But I love journalism. It has broken my heart at sometimes because of the racism in it, but yet I have really been all around the world covering leaders, covering famines, covering riots, and I'm still doing it. I'm 77, and I'm still doing it. So, and look at you. Look how you can bring people to your audience where they can be heard and find people who care about what they're saying. So, journalism, to me, I love it.
I love that. And I just want to commend you for creating these spaces and breaking these barriers that you have done. And for all of our listeners that are listening, create your own platform. There's a niche for everybody, and the time is now, per Dr. Reynolds, to get into journalism. So go ahead and take the leap. If you want to become a journalist, go ahead and jump. So, Dr. Reynolds, you speak on mentorship a lot. So what are some strategies you would give to listeners about mentorship?
Well, I've thought a lot about that because mentorship gives you the opportunity to give back. And then it's like, what do we want to have all this knowledge for if we can't pass it to somebody else? And in just from my examples, I have a mentee named Tracy Gales, which she's going to be on your show, I understand.
Yes.
And I'm a minister, so sometimes the Spirit will guide me. And I remember seeing her. I had a TV show, and I would see her there at the show, and she didn't have her show then. And I remember that I said to her, "Can I be your mentor?" And, of course, she said, "Yeah." And so on my show, I gave her a piece of my show, and it was Take It to the Streets, and she got a microphone and would go out in the streets and get interviews. And I could see, I didn't know this was her dream. I just know that when I saw her, I knew that she had what it took to be a journalist, and that, she is another young man who I met at the paper. He used to come to the paper and meet me. Young man, quiet young man, and he just wanted to follow me around. So he liked to go to be around celebrities, and I'd always just take him. And he eventually became my godson. His name was Keith McGee, and he's a pastor now. He just won a Genius Award. He's in London, and both of these people always want me to be with them. So when Tracy goes someplace, she'll say, "Come on." And when Dr. Keith wants to go someplace, he'll say, "You want to go to London with me? You want to hang out?" I mean, it comes back to you. You see, if you just reach out now, and that's not why you should mentor people, so to come back. You should mentor, give your gifts to other people because it's the right thing to do. But in my case, my mentoring people has just blessed me. I think we have to reach back, and we have to overcome any kind of jealousy, or which is a whole nother show. But you can really be rewarded, if not by the people themselves, but I believe God will give you the reward, because the Bible says you reap what you sow. And so people think, they shake when they hear that, reap what you sow. But if you sow good seeds, it's going to come back to you. So I'm really strong on mentoring. And then, the other half of it is I have made many mistakes in my life. Sometimes I look at my life, I say, I don't even know how I became a success if it wasn't for God, because I really made mistakes. So, sometimes I can deal with people who have emotional issues, like I know how it feels to be rejected. And I know what will happen when people are wounded. I know how it feels to be sexually abused, because that's what happened between me and my father. I can understand. I was an alcoholic for years. And I wasn't an alcoholic because I wanted to be. I wanted to feel normal. But people who are rejected or abused, they have a wound in their soul. And unless they can find Jesus and someone helps them, then they can choose alcohol, they can choose drugs, they can choose sexual campaigns and all of that. And so I try to deal with people who I know are wounded, because, what's inside of you is what manifests on the outside. So, I just take great pride. I won't say pride because that has a bad connotation, but I'm proud. I just said it again. So I'm proud of the people that I have mentored, because I can see what a gift they are, and then I see them doing great things. It's like it's being passed on, So it's something that, and I think black people have always been strong in reaching out to other people, because we all have extended families that we reach out. We, like my grandmother was always raising the boy next door, across the street. I remember this young man, when I moved to Chicago, I just took him with me. I mean, we just reached out and grabbed people and just took them and made sure they had what they I think that black people that I know, of course we have, and I'm not just saying black people is just because I have lived among black people. I'm using us as an example. We have been a group of people. We've had teachers, who took interest in us, even when maybe we weren't the nice kid. We've had neighbors who took a hand in us. And in a way, that too was mentoring, setting example. I try to, when I go around and I see a young person saying something, even cursing a child, if I get a chance, I'll say, do you know that with the same words you could produce a scientist, a doctor, a teacher? Just the same words that you're telling her that he's not going to be nothing, that he's no good. The same breath, the same mouth you used to damn that child, you could raise a queen or king. The same word, the same energy. So, I just think mentoring and being an example and giving yourself away is the way we have to build a better society.
And I love that you spoke about that, because mentorship is so important. And I'm a firm believer that a true successful leader is one who reaches back and pulls forward. So thank you for speaking on that, Dr. Reynolds, and really talking about and going deep with mentorship, because it's so important that we are mentors and that we reach back and pull forward. And you also have written for many major magazines such as the Chicago Tribune, Playboy. You was one of the founders of USA Today, and you wrote for Ebony and Essence. So please tell our listeners how you reached those goals. How did you reach those major accomplishments?
Well, I tell you, I think that it was sort of a gift that was in me, because I always wondered if I had been treated well, what would have happened. Because I remember how I wanted to be a writer was when I was about 8 years old. I saw a picture of a horse on a book, and it was by Barbara Reynolds. I got that book. I said, how did this name get on? How my name got on this book? I didn't write this. Then the person told me it was a writer, and I tucked it somewhere that I really wanted to see my name on a book. And so, I went to Ohio State University, and I was a musician at that time. I played the violin and the trumpet. I wanted to be in the marching band, and they told me I couldn't be in the marching band because I was a woman. Women couldn't be in the marching band. And so I was angry. I just threw my trumpet away. I never played again. I almost didn't like music for a while. Then I said, oh, you know what? I took a journalism course, and I fell in love. I just loved it. But the dean of the journalism school said, you can't become a journalist because you're colored. And then something rose up in me, and I just said to myself, it was, a song that they had in those days. I'd rather drink muddy water or sleep in a hollow log, but I'm going to do this thing. I just said, wait a minute, what am I supposed to do? You don't want me to be a musician. Now you say I can't be a journalist. I'm going to be a journalist anyhow. So I graduated from the school, and they got the white students jobs, and they didn't get me a job. So I would call the different newspapers and say to them, I have my degree in journalism from Ohio State. Can I come for an interview? In those days, I'm talking about in the 70s and 60s, I'd show up and they say, well, we didn't know you were colored. And we don't hire colored. It was before affirmative action. So it was a determination. I got a job in Chicago as a social worker. And I was really good at it, and they wanted to help me get my MSW. I said, no, I want to be a journalist. So I got an opportunity to become a journalist at a Cleveland paper. And I eventually went on to Chicago to work at Ebony. I worked under John H. Johnson, which some of you might know. He was the founder of Ebony. And his story was remarkable because he founded the Ebony and Jet in Black World with $500 that he borrowed on his mother's furniture. And to buy the building that we were in, he had to dress up like a janitor and say he was showing the building to his boss. I mean, these things that we had to go through, the audience of the day have no idea. I was treated so bad at the Chicago Tribune when I was hired. I was told, now here I am, a young writer, and I'm told by my editors that they know I couldn't write, they know I couldn't report, but I was only there because the Black Panthers and others demanded it, and I wasn't wanted. And I never will forget this experience. One day, the daughter of Ida B. Wells, and I know your audience knows Ida B. Wells. She was one of the most famous black journalists in America, one of the founders of the NAACP. Her daughter came to see me. Her name was Alfreda Duster. And she said, I know, I've heard about what a hard time you had. She said, but if you will do well, one of these days, there'll be hundreds of black journalists. If you do well. She said, my mother, Ida B. Wells, could not come into this building unless she was dressed up like a maid. You are here. Do well. I still think about that, about how she encouraged me and I found out that black people have a certain type of creativity. Now I call it spiritual technology that God downloads into us, because for some reason they said they would make me work on Saturdays. Let the white folks go have a nice time. But I found out I could look in the ticker tape then, and I would find stories like so-and-so got shot fighting over a chicken bone. And I would go out in the community and find out how that happened, and make it sound so dramatic that they had to keep putting it on the front page. So they started calling me Front Page Reynolds. And it was like, in the slavery times, the white folks, they would get the greens, the kale, the collards, and all the juice they'd leave in the pot. Well, that was where all the vitamins were. So we had a sense of how to turn the leftovers into a great banquet, a feast. That was just something we learned. And so I was, they didn't want to cover Jesse Jackson. He had a meeting every Saturday. It was my beat, and some of the great stories came from going to Operation Push and Breadbasket. My first book was about Reverend Jesse Jackson. So wherever they pushed me, I was like Brer Rabbit, who they kept throwing in the barbed patch, and he loved it because he finds some carrots there, just start crunching away and singing a happy song. Mm-hmm. So wherever they would throw me, God would just lift me up and show me something creative to do. And then I found out that, okay, these people paid me, but I went out in the community. I started 2 magazines, one called Dollars and Cents, and it was called the Black Book Business Directory. I started working outside of the place, because when I was inside, see, it's different. When I was inside the newsroom, they wanted black stories to be about crime, about something going wrong. But when I would go outside, I would meet people who were brilliant, lawyers and doctors and teachers. And I say, well, how come their stories aren't told? Why every time somebody shoots somebody, that's a story, but somebody graduating from college is not a story? And so I started working for the black community and telling their stories. And so I had a life inside the newsroom, but I had a life outside the newsroom telling the story of black people. So, and that, of course, led me to Coretta King. So, it's been a rough ride, but I still made it to the top. For 13 years, I was on the editorial board of USA Today. I covered presidents and heads of colleges because I was the head of the op-ed page. And so, even though it was rough and it was tough, God still made a way.
Yeah.
And I think that's the way it is for anybody trying to do anything. It's not ever going to be easy. Success is not easy. If it was easy, everyone would be a success.
Yeah.
But it's for those who have commitment and courage and have the Spirit of the Lord working for them and beside them.
I love that. And for our listeners that are listening, success is not easy. It takes commitment, courage, and having the Spirit of the Lord beside you. I love that, Dr. Reynolds. And I ask all of my guests this question because you've built multiple tables throughout your life. So how did you create your seat at the table?
Okay. Would you repeat the question?
How did you create your seat at the table?
Okay. Well, it depends, of what table you want to be at and what it's going to take. Some tables you don't want to be at, You really don't, because you got to think. For example, and we have great examples just watching Trump. If you want, and I say it all the time, if you want to join the Trump administration, you're either going to hell or to jail, or maybe both. That's a table. But for some reason, the people who join that table, they go to jail. Can't say if they're going to hell, but because I'm not in charge of sending people there. But if I were, that's where it would be. But many of them, that's not a table you want to be at. You want to be at a table that is in line with your purpose and your principles. And so sometimes you have to create your own table. And then you can invite who you want to be at your table. And it can happen. In Indianapolis, we saw 17 or 18 women who are doing just that. Create your own way. If they don't want you with them, create your own crowd. Because too many people, I look, for example, at other people like Whitney Houston, for example. And sometimes I wonder what would have happened if there had been people around her that said, Whitney, you don't have to use this drug. Let me help you. But no, they saw her as a person who could give them money and fame. And so money and fame, but she's dead.
Right.
Michael Jackson, money and fame, but he's dead because he had to have more drugs to stay alive. So we have to choose, especially, because we have a self-centered culture. Social media is good in some ways, but it is teaching people to be about self, that life is about me. How many likes did I get today? Let me run. Have I put my picture today on Facebook? Click, click, click. What is it above just creating a platform for you? How are you helping? Who are you reaching? Who are you teaching? So we have to look and see who's hiding under the table. Because everything that you think that you see is not really what's going on. And the desire to run with the beautiful people, to run with the fast crowd, people, because, you look at what young people are looking at, and who are the people that they are talking about, not the scientists or the professors, but Beyonce, because she had a long ponytail. She came to a concert with a long. Of course, she can sing and she's talented, but there are values that we have to really applaud people for. Our kids who are going to school and hanging in there and studying math. We got to make that something popular. We can't just think we can make it with the values that we have, because we're in a period of being shallow. I really think we are. We have social media that has just lulled us to sleep. We don't have to do much thinking, because all we have to do is ask Google. We don't have to do a whole lot of thinking. We don't have to go to the libraries. We don't even have to meditate. We don't even have to spend time with God when you see what's going on. Because a lot of people, when they want to find a boyfriend or something, they get a dating service. Ask Google. But Google will never say, go pray on it. Go read the Word. So, we need to really go back to the Bible. And, when you see people lose their cell phones, they panic. You see kids almost going to have fits and tantrums if you take away their cell phone. But do we go through all that when we can't get to church? Do we camp out? You know, our values are very skewed, and I think we're going to have to go back to some of our traditional values as we move along in the social media and the technology of today. But we still have to do you know that memory is not a big deal anymore? You know, how many people now can even remember their phone numbers? You know, when I was a kid, I had all my friends' phone numbers in my head. But now people say, oh, just put it up there in the cloud. You don't have to remember anything. Put it in the cloud, you know. So I think, you know, at some point we're going to have to recycle ourselves or reinvent ourselves because I don't think the values. See, I worry about values a whole lot because even if we throw Trump out, which we have to, and if the Democrats in and we have the same values, if we don't value our children, you know, I'm living in Washington. It's supposed to be the capital of the Western world, of the superpower. But I'm running across women every day who are sleeping on the street. And it's not an issue here, you know. But we have technology that is going to take people to Mars pretty soon. But we don't have technology that can see women sleeping on the street with their children. So we're going to have to move in another direction. We can't see children who try to get to school because the only hot meal they're going to have is the one they have at school. You know? So we're losing a lot, but the new generation, they have the energy. But I think they need the leadership of well, maybe not of our generation, but I don't see enough of leadership among some of our millennials. You know, I just don't see it yet. Maybe it will come, but I just don't see it. I mean, there's no reason in the world that the church should be so silent as it is now. You know, if there was ever a time for preachers to stand up and say, Trump, what you're doing is evil. The white evangelicals, I have no respect for them now. Oh, and before I get off the air, I want to talk about Kirk Franklin. You know, he had received a Dove Award, which is for gospel singing, and but mostly white, I think, if I'm saying it correctly. But anyway, when he received the award, he talked about some of the black people who had been killed by police, and also some of the police who had been killed by blacks. And he said, we need to come together to pray about this. TBN edited it out of his speech. And see, TBN has gone right-wing, because that used to be my favorite show. It used to have, I used to love TBN, but now they've got Mike Huckabee, the former governor of Alabama, whose daughter Sarah was Trump's press secretary, and it's going right-wing. John Hagee talks about liberals and Democrats badly all the time. Huckabee talks about blacks and people of color very badly, and there's no balance. There's no person who is to the left of Huckabee. And so Trump has now, I guess, is spending enough money or doing enough of whatever he's doing to convince that the TBN that I used to love is now controlled by white evangelicals who somehow think that blacks don't deserve to be respected, and it's a shame because you know, God said there's one religion, there's one God. So why is it that we are so far apart? You know, I just think that if we had the people like Coretta King and some of the people there, because she could talk across the aisle to everybody. You know,
Yeah.
she had that kind of cachet. You know, and I'm you know, and I know I've studied her for years, but I don't have that kind of personality because I wish I was like her. I wish I could have. I knew what she did, but it was never me because I'm too angry. You know, I know that. I just cannot love these people. I know I'm supposed to, and I know I'm supposed to forgive them, but I'm so disappointed in these white Christians who can see such evil and not say anything.
Yeah.
You know, how can you be there among the president and the kids are crying, the kids are hungry, and they're locked up in cages, and the president is saying that's the policy we have to separate children from their parents, and those of us who have children, we know that if we're with our child and he's gone for 5 minutes, we're hysterical. I mean, they're bringing up a whole generation of haters right in this country once they understand why their mother left them, why they don't have a daddy. And you don't see anything wrong with that. So then I hear people say, well, it's because he's against abortion. Okay, he's against abortion, but it's okay to maim and abuse the ones that are alive. So you know, I'm not Mrs. King because she would not even speak unkindly about people because she believed that violent speech was dangerous. So hopefully there will be people who, you know, we just lost a person, Elijah Cummings from Baltimore, who was that kind of person who could speak against the across the aisle and bring blacks and whites together. Because I don't see how we can continue so divided. I mean, because the president said he was a nationalist, which means that he shows support for white supremacists. And so how can you live like this? You know, a house divided against itself, Abraham Lincoln used to say, cannot stand. So somehow we going to have to quit hating on each other and try to find the good in something that can bring us together. You know, and I do have some hope because when I go among just normal people, like I went to Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. Then I was in Ocean City, North Carolina. Then I was in other places in North Carolina. I see people walking around acting normal. I mean, you know, I see blacks and whites going in the shopping center, eating together, you know, and they're married, having a great time together. I go to a movie in West Virginia that's all white. Me and a couple people, only black people in there. And they had a show, and they were rooting for the Black Panthers. You know what I'm saying? I said, wait a minute, we got Trump with the haters there, make America great again, and the white nationalists. But when I go around normal, just everyday people, you know, I see people wanting to learn to live together. I really don't think the young group of people are going to carry on with this hate. I think we're going to come out of it. I really do, because when I go and speak towards white in white groups, I'm just amazed how much respect I get from them. You know, how I see people in groups, you know, together. So I think maybe, you know, the next generation will not carry this hate and spitefulness that Trump and his associates and the white Christians are spewing across the land.
Amazing. So, Dr. Reynolds, this has been a very powerful interview. It's been amazing. I'm so excited for my listeners to have heard, you know, the wisdom and knowledge that you have shared with us tonight. It's been so, so powerful. So will you please tell us how we can follow you on all social media platforms and connect with you?
Well, I am on Facebook, and that's one way. I have Tracy who is she works with me and keeps my calendar and everything, and I think I might have her phone number. I don't take any more friend requests because there are people. Her phone number is 301-741-5254, and I have a website which is www.drreynolds.com. So, and I have an email which is Reynew, REYNEW 77 @gmail.com. But I don't take friend requests because I've had too many people who are trying to get in there and set up profiles, then send out letters to people pretending to be me. So I've got about, I look through the hundreds of friend requests, but I just don't take them anymore.
Okay. So please connect with Dr. Reynolds. As we know, she's legendary. She is a history maker. So definitely reach out to her and connect with her. She is someone to know and connect with. Dr. Reynolds, thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to come to the table tonight to bless us with all of this wisdom and just had this powerful interview that you have shared with us tonight. And I cannot wait to invite you back to the table.
But what made this a great hour was the questions that you answered, that you asked. That's what was exciting because you gave me a chance to talk in a way that I haven't talked to many people, but that's because of the way that you can get people to bring their best selves forward as a good hostess.
Thank you so much, Dr. Reynolds. I'm so humbled, with you saying that, and I look forward to continuing to work and collaborate with you in the future.
All right. Thank you so much. God bless you.
Thank you, Dr. Reynolds. So I would like to give a special thanks to Dr. Tracy Gales, a special thanks to Tammy Collins-Marquis and John Schamberger, and I would also like to give a special thanks to Author Kimberly McLemore and my intern, Sarah, from Tennessee State University, and my intern, Vontaria, from Winston-Salem State University. You all may follow me on Facebook at Ashley